Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler, author of A Saga on Home Video, a fan's guide to U.S. Star Wars home video releases, released earlier this year, back in May. And this time, we sort of open up a new approach. Not that we're taking a new approach, we are, but that we're opening up an entire new approach. So something we haven't really seen much with this series. Over the years, as this series has been going, and even as I was working on the book, I have people asking me, so what about the parodies? Now, what about the stuff that's sort of about Star Wars, but isn't really Star Wars? What about Troops? What about George Lucas in Love? What about Robot Chicken? What about Spaceballs? Etc., etc. And my thought process at the time had been, pretty much throughout, that if we're focusing on official releases, parodies usually aren't official releases. They're official for whatever that parody company is. But when it comes to actually being official releases of Star Wars material through whoever's distributing Star Wars material at the time, they really aren't. There's something different. And that actually led me to eventually include Phineas and Ferb Star Wars within the series, but not other parodies, because Phineas and Ferb Star Wars was promoted kind of as a crossover as opposed to a parody, and it was by Disney. So, of course, if they're owning Star Wars, then that makes sense that they would be able to have that license to make sort of a parody of it, or a crossover of it. Only, it's just sat sort of weird with me over time that Phineas and Ferb was included, and the other stuff wasn't. And the biggest concern had been, where would you draw the line? If I did start to include parodies, where would the line be drawn between what gets included and what doesn't? Because there's tons of parodies out there, anything from super low-budget stuff that you only see online, that may have gotten a limited DVD release or something at some point, but that's about it. Or something like Troops that was released sort of officially. You got that Total Movie Magazine or whatever it was DVD that has Troops on it. No, I'm not joking. This has Troops on it. There's no way to cover everything. So what should fit within the purview of this show and the book? And I started sort of rethinking this and talked to some people who follow the show, who've read through the entire book, cover to cover, thank you very much, by the way, and finally kind of sat back and said, you know what, fine, it's time to do some reevaluating. Maybe we can include these, and I can include them within my Star Wars home video library here at home. Now, some of these I already had in the library, I just didn't have all the different versions of them. I didn't hunt down multiple copies and stuff like that, like I do with the rest of my collection. But if I'm going to include it on the show, and might say give parodies a chapter of their own in the book next time, in the second edition years from now, whenever that winds up happening, then I probably do need to hunt down different versions and make sure that I'm doing heavier research into these types of parodies. It's a gargantuan process unless it's narrowed down to some way of differentiating what should be included and what should not. And what I hit upon was basically using Phineas and Ferb as an example. And that is that Phineas and Ferb got input, approval, the thumbs up, so to speak, from the people behind Star Wars before its release, during production before its release. Now, that was really easy for that particular production to do because it was Disney, and so is Star Wars now, under Lucasfilm, which is under Disney. So that seems like an easy one to apply, an easy rule to apply, but that would differentiate it from things that perhaps got an acknowledgement after the fact. Like, you take Troops. Again, Total Movie Magazine back in October/November of 2000 for their issue at the time. They used to always include a DVD in it. Had this little DVD inside it of short films and whatnot. And one of the 3 short films on here to go along with, like trouble sticking it back into the case. There we go. One of the short films on here is Troops, along with stuff like The Dancing Cow and trailers and all kinds of stuff like that. That was given a nod in the sense that Kevin Rubio wound up being brought in and he wound up writing the Tag and Bink comics. But at the time it was being made, at the time that he, as a fan, made this fan film as a parody, there, as far as I know, was no actual collaboration or thumbs up or anything like that from Lucasfilm. He put it out there, it made a splash, people at Lucasfilm eventually saw it and were like, hey, that's pretty good, that's pretty sweet, yeah, that's awesome, and it sort of built up the fan film genre. But that particular film did not have the sanction ahead of time the way that, say, Phineas and Ferb Star Wars did. So to me, Troops really wouldn't count, at least for the purview of the main series here or for the book. But what about the things that did? sometimes you would see something that actually had the okay during the production process, despite the fact that you might sit back and say, well, it's making fun of Star Wars. Well, George Lucas has the ability to laugh at himself, as do others within official Star Wars production, so it makes sense that sometimes they would see an idea for a parody, and they just kind of like it. Say, yeah, that's pretty sweet, go for it. You could argue about whether Disney has that kind of sense of humor about it, because they did basically derail Detours as a Star Wars spoof, thinking that they didn't want to bring that type of mentality of spoofing themselves into the mix as they were trying to relaunch the saga with the reboot and everything. But hopefully someday we'll see Detours too. In narrowing that down, the products that I found that seem to fit that description, and if there's other ones, feel free to let me know in the comments, I'm hoping to kind of crowdsource this as well, were Robot Chicken Star Wars, the Family Guy Star Wars Trilogy, my thoughts on that eventually as well, Fanboys, and Spaceballs. Those four, along with Phineas and Ferb Star Wars, so sort of a clear 5, a Fifth Element kind of thing, 5 different items here, seem to be the ones that, as far as I can tell, got the nod during the process or even before the process, as opposed to after it. And that has opened the door for covering some Star Wars parodies, including ones in my collection and ones that I'm now adding to the collection here on the show, and eventually in another edition of the book. On the show, I'm going to play it a little bit looser, and yes, we will delve into stuff like Thumb Wars, or this with troops on it. But we'll do it in some way where I'll denote in the episode, I don't know if it's in the title or where it'll be, that it's a little bit kind of off to the side. It's not quite a regular topic within the purview of the show, but I not show it. Okay? So we start this episode with that, checking out one of these smaller of the collections of Star Wars parody products from a particular release, and that is Robot Chicken Star Wars. Now, I was a fan of Robot Chicken before they did any kind of Star Wars parody. Robot Chicken, for those who are not familiar with it, is this show on Adult Swim, which is on Cartoon Network, and it's basically, it's puppet animation and clay animation and stuff like that, to as stop-motion animation, to give you sort of pop culture humor. So you have some that are based on just general cultural things, but a lot of them are based on individual sci-fi franchises, TV shows, and things like that as parodies. But it's done sort of in the sense of you're sitting back watching these things and flipping through the channels. As my chair is creaking quite a bit there. So some of them can last a matter of minutes. Some of these little skits can last a matter of seconds. It just depends on what it is and how much is necessary. One of the ones that sticks out of my mind as something very short is you've got basically this giant leg or arm or something that's purple on the ground, connected to obviously a bigger body right next to it, and you have a cop sitting there beside it with a, his smoking sidearm or whatever, and there's blood by that giant purple body, and the cop is scratching his head and looking at the wallet of the dead purple body and says, "Oh, grape ape, grape, I didn't hear the G." Right, which would have meant rape ape, so, yeah, exactly. That kind of thing I find funny. It's just the quick, rapid-fire humor. And in doing so, they don't really have to adhere to any kind of storyline. So they can parody a film and do something that's maybe a parody of the Battle of Endor, or they can make an entire thing about Admiral Akbar's "It's a Trap" and "Our cruisers can't repel firepower of that magnitude" type of lines, and use it as a commercial for Admiral Akbar's cereal. Yeah, "Your taste buds can't repel flavor of this magnitude," or whatever it is that he says. It's weird, but it's funny. It's almost like if you want to take a comparison, take something like a Weird Al Yankovic, what he does with music, where sometimes there's a tale to it, sometimes it's just weird stuff, sometimes it's a pop cultural reference, sometimes it's sort of a societal reference type thing, but it's all meant to kind of hit you in a funny way for just a few minutes and then it's gone. That's basically what Robot Chicken does with stop-motion animation. That's by Seth Green, and I always have trouble with his partner's name here. It is, I believe it's Matt Sir Heinrich, is how you say it? Or maybe Senreich? I have a really hard time with his last name, no matter how many times I hear him say it. But it's most associated oftentimes with Seth Green, because he does a lot of the voices, and he actually is a voice actor also on Family Guy, which will make for a weird connection when we look at those here in the near future. So for a while, Robot Chicken was doing little short humor bits, and sometimes they would reference Star Wars. And eventually they were like, well, maybe we could actually get them to say okay to doing a whole episode about Star Wars. And so they went, they asked the question, they got a yes. Turns out that George Lucas actually really likes Robot Chicken, either before, during, or after this process, because at their premiere he noted that this is the one show he can't watch on TV without crying, because he's crying from laughing so hard. And they got the okay. So what you wind up with, to begin with, is that on June 17th, 2007, and then on DVD on July 22nd, 2008, we see this. Robot Chicken Star Wars. You can see your characters there, of course, the way they appear in some of the skits. Stuff on the back. There's your spine there. Nice and clean looking. And it's just weird stuff, like Luke throwing the grenade into the AT-AT in The Empire Strikes Back, and oh, there's an AT-AT driver who's taking a crap, and he's going to get blown up. Or George W. Bush versus Abraham Lincoln in a lightsaber duel. Even the classic one about, stop whining or I'll tell everyone what kind of like a little whiny bitch you were about Padamame or Panda Bear or whatever her name was. Really cool stuff. And George Lucas even lent his voice to it for one of the skits with Lucas at a convention and so forth. Now, in this case, this is basically just a regular episode of Robot Chicken. So the entire runtime is going to be pretty tiny. Just 23 minutes. But it's a really funny 23 minutes for those who have a sense of humor that really kind of fits with the mold of what Robot Chicken tries to do. Again, skits go from anywhere from a matter of minutes to a matter of seconds, so you're talking about 30 skits, give or take, to fit within the runtime of this here. The disc itself looks like so. Cool Death Star there. Adult Swim logo. Logo for William Street DVD something that's all blurry. DVD and then Robot Chicken Star Wars logo there. But yes, this is a DVD. Unfortunately, in the States, we do not have a Blu-ray release of Robot Chicken Star Wars. Now, somewhat making up for the fact that you're buying a whole DVD for one episode that's only about 20-25 minutes or so, 23 according to it, is the fact that this sucker has a ton of extra features. You have chicken nuggets. Chicken nuggets are basically these little points while you're watching where this little chicken logo will pop up, and if you hit the button on your remote, you get a little behind the scenes about that skit. You have their animation meeting, or clips from the animation meeting where they're sort of talking about what the show is going to be and what some of these skits are going to be. The on-air bumps, of which there were a ton. When they premiered this, they had a whole night of programming built around it, so they wound up doing a lot of the bumps or the in and out of commercial little bits and pieces. You have trailers for the special. You have behind the scenes of the special, which includes, among other things, talking about, getting the okay from Lucasfilm. I believe that's where we also see footage of their premiere, because not only did they get the okay ahead of time, all 3 Robot Chicken specials premiered at Skywalker Ranch, with George Lucas in attendance. If that's not getting the thumbs up during production, and then before it hits us, I'm not quite sure what is. So they got the okay, and they got the chance to premiere there. You also have deleted scenes, stuff that they just decided not to use, alternate audio, which is similar video to some stuff we've seen before, but some alternate takes where they were just kind of ad-libbing as they went. Some bits on production design, the development of the individual sets and whatnot, the models that they used, some time-lapse of the stop-motion photography, a photo gallery, and then a panel presentation from a convention about the special. A ton. In fact, I think the extras, if you run them all together, run probably about double the length of just the special itself. Really, really good stuff if you're looking for extras on a DVD. Very jam-packed. They did not skimp out on it, but it is just one episode on this DVD. But if you want to check it out, it is available on DVD in the US. But they weren't content to just stop there. On November 16th of 2008, and then on DVD, July 21st, 2009, we were treated to a second Robot Chicken special known as, what else? Robot Chicken Star Wars Episode 2. We have our front cover there. Back. Your spine there. Similar in the clean look to what we got for the first one. And then you pop it open. And there's your disc. For Take Your Daughter to Work Day, basically. Vader and a Stormtrooper with the Stormtrooper's daughter tagging along for the day. Now again, this is released only on DVD, just like the previous one, but this one was pretty special for its time, because the previous one had just been a single episode of Robot Chicken to air on TV, and it was kind of pushing it in terms of length to be about 23 minutes, because the show tends to only be about 15 minutes, give or take, of runtime. Well, now, we had an episode that was about 22 minutes, filled a nice half-hour spot on television, but in including that on the DVD, they also, not instead, also included an extended version. And that extended version added about 15 minutes of more skits, which almost doubles the length of the special, because it's a lot more cool Star Wars Robot Chicken stuff. I would note also, incidentally, that even though this aired just during the regular airing of Robot Chicken, it was not included in the season set for its particular season, so you do need to pick this one up separately, even if you got some season sets of Robot Chicken. Now, aside from having that awesome extended version that's on here that almost doubles the length of the thing, you also, again, have a ton of extras. We have chicken nuggets again. We have the making of Robot Chicken Star Wars 2, talking about, again, the setup for it, getting to have the premiere and everything. The animation meeting for this one, actual footage from the Skywalker Ranch premiere as a separate item, a visit from the Imperial 501st, the cosplayers with the armor and everything actually visiting and being able to bestow upon them honorary membership within the 501st. A sneak peek, which is sort of a behind-the-scenes sneak peek thing that had aired. Accepted and rejected segments, sort of the, well, you know, here's some ideas, yeah, well, that just sucked, versus here's an idea and how it originally came about for one that actually got into it. More time-lapse stuff, more production design stuff, video blogs that they had put out about it as they were leading up to it and as they were talking about the production, deleted animatics, alternate audio again, the on-air bumps again, and once again, trailers. So an even more extensive load of extras for Robot Chicken Star Wars Episode 2. And I guess while we're at it, since I'm not going to do a separate episode probably, I do have a UK version of this. I was told I was getting the limited edition UK version. That was bullcrap. I got the regular one. Screw that eBayer. But, yeah, very similar. Lots of text on the US one that's not found on the back of the UK one for a cleaner picture, with the information down there on the bottom. You can tell by the rating which side is which. Feels like the UK one is a little bit more cluttered. And as far as your discs go, the discs look essentially identical in terms of the picture chosen, but they zoomed out for the UK one to include more text. So there's your US one, there's your UK one there. Now you can't just leave a trilogy incomplete, we need a third one, and sure enough, we got one with Robot Chicken Star Wars Episode 3, aired on December 19th, 2010, and released on home video on July 12th, 2011. Now, this is a little bit different in a couple of ways. One is its length. Okay? This is what you would think of as a double-length episode relative to any regular half-hour production. But remember, this Robot Chicken show is a little weird in that it's really only about half the length, usually, or a little bit more, of a regular half-hour production. So it winds up being essentially double the length of the first aired episode, or the second aired but not extended episode, which means that it winds up being virtually 3 to 4 times more content than in any regular Robot Chicken episode, which is pretty sweet. It also is the only one of these with a real through line going through. Now, you could see some themes repeating and some characters returning and interpretations of situations returning, like Dengar and Boba Fett and such, and the hunt for bounty hunters and whatnot. You could see those types of things continuing on from time to time in episodes 1 and 2 of the Robot Chicken specials, but 3 actually has a framing story. Basically, in 2010, of course, there's no, as Vader picks up and throws the Emperor in Return of the Jedi. So, silently, Vader picks up, throws Palpatine, and as he's falling down the shaft, we follow him with the camera until it stops. And it's sort of a, how on earth did we get here? How did it all go so wrong? And then that provides a framing story, and he provides sort of a framing narration throughout the entire special as it does skits in rough chronological order within the Star Wars universe through the prequels and then the original trilogy all the way up to the end of Return of the Jedi, which has kind of an interesting twist to it. It's funny. I mean, I find it kind of an amusing thing. It's weird to see a Robot Chicken show at all with that type of structure outside of something maybe around Christmas time. But they managed to pull it off in giving us a rough structure for a series of what amounts to just individual skits. Now, this is available on DVD, and as with the others, was chock full of special features. Get Chicken Nuggets again, featurettes, Robot Chicken Skate Tour 09, a video about that, deleted scenes and animatics, the Skywalker Ranch premiere featured again, commentaries, Star Wars Celebration 5 Robot Chicken panels, gag reel, trailers, and Sunday in the Boardroom with George Lucas. Now, what also makes this one a little bit different is that when you pop this into your DVD player, lo and behold, this one is actually widescreen, or enhanced for widescreen TVs. So you can watch most of this as 16:9, because that's the way it was actually produced. Whereas Episode 1 and Episode 2, some of it was full screen, some of it was widescreen, but it was all done in a full screen 4:3 type of format. And when it's widescreen, it's just letterboxed widescreen with the black bars on top and bottom. So on a modern television, you have black bars on either side as you're watching, and then top and bottom sometimes when the scene requires it. Not for this one. This one is going for widescreen based on its original television presentation. Yet another instance of seeing how the home presentation in this case is changing in terms of what is now becoming the norm. Slowly transitioning to HD, transitioning to widescreen televisions, and so on as we're entering the 20-teens and such, and right before that. What was also happening, of course, and had actually happened for Star Wars for the first time back in 2008, and in reference to those no's, wouldn't happen for the original trilogy for another, well, few months after this was released on home video in July of 2011, was that Blu-ray was starting to take over the home video market. So unlike its predecessors, Robot Chicken Star Wars 3 actually got a Blu-ray release. Holy crap! Widescreen and Blu-ray and the story? What won't they think of next, right? Very, very similar here. So let's check out each cover. We've got Vader doing his dancing with characters behind him. Vader's doing his dancing with characters behind him. Interestingly, both of these use this wide Robot Chicken Star Wars logo for Episode 3, but when you put them actually in the player, the menu screen for the Blu-ray shows it wide like that, but then the menu screen for the DVD shows instead Robot on top of Chicken, and it's more condensed in another similar way that we've seen logos, kind of like the way that the logos are on some of the prequel DVDs. Kind of interesting there, if you're into really nitpicking this stuff. You've got your spines. Again, kind of a clean look to them. I like the uniformity of the spines from one episode to another. And then we have our back with information about it. Palpatine going up the escalator while stormtroopers are coming down. That's the my lord, my lord, my lord, my lord, my lord, my lord, my lord skit. And the same thing on the DVD version. As for our discs, this is where it gets a little bit tricky here. Okay? Little bit tricky. I'm going to pull up both discs here for you at the same time. Ta-da! Which one's DVD, which one's Blu-ray? Shit. I can't tell, right? It's because the logos, or the logos and the images, so the labels are effectively identical with the exception of the teeny tiny fine print. And the teeny tiny fine print at the very end of the fine print has either a Blu-ray logo or a DVD logo. I'm assuming that fine print is so small you could probably barely even see it. But you see that almost like a white line running along that bottom edge? Way over here is where you get that teeny tiny DVD symbol. DVD here and Blu-ray there underneath. But they both have that logo there. If you're trying to figure out what that is, that's the Sarlacc viewed from right above, so your finger is actually going into the Sarlacc pit. Or, another way of looking at it, if you're picking it up like I am here instead of like this, you're picking it up like this, then in essence, your finger just became the special edition beak of the Sarlacc pit. Kind of nifty, not entirely sure if they intended it that way, but surely they did, given the way that it's designed, right? Right? Probably? Maybe? Now, interestingly, if you bought the Blu-ray instead of the DVD, you did get a couple of other minor special features. You get time-lapse stuff again on the Blu-ray that was not on the DVD this time, whereas it was on the previous two DVDs, and animation reference section. Otherwise, essentially identical bonus features. And then, finally, you might expect that anytime we have a trilogy of some kind, ladies and gentlemen, there's gotta be a box set of it out there. And US audiences often think there must be a box set of these three out there, so we'll hop online and we'll go out and we will buy this baby. Right? Star Wars Robot Chicken episodes 1 and 2 and 3, does say and for each, includes all 3 specials. Over 5 hours of special features. Awesome! Box set! Not so much. All it is the 3 previous DVD releases, just stuck inside shrink wrap with a piece of paper on top of them that shows this. But it's generally marketed this way, usually with stock images, so people, like me, wind up thinking, hey, it's a box set, gotta have that. No, there was no box set over here. Now, in other countries, you had box sets, and you had Blu-rays of the ones that never got Blu-rays before in the U.S. But for U.S. audiences, the only way to get number 1, at least on physical media, was DVD. Number 2 was DVD. Number 3 was DVD and Blu-ray. But then for getting all of them at once, the only option was individually, or in this that's not really a box set that just happens to package them together, that as soon as you take off the shrink wrap, which I haven't, obviously, just falls apart into the individual releases again. Unfortunately, no boxed set, either DVD or Blu-ray, for Robot Chicken Star Wars, and given the changes of hands that have taken place over the years, it does not seem likely that we will ever get one, unfortunately, because this is one of my favorite Star Wars parodies, or Star Wars parody series of all time, and certainly, in my opinion, a hell of a lot better than its contemporary, also being released around the same time, which was the Family Guy Star Wars spoofs. But that we'll take a look at in some upcoming episodes. So we've looked at Robot Chicken, we're going to take a look at Fanboys, we're going to take a look at the Family Guy stuff, as I mentioned, and we are eventually going to take a look at Spaceballs, but holy crap, there's a lot of Spaceballs stuff for me to gather up first. With that, though, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.